Whether it's Gretzky's 99 or Lemieux's 66, the number a player wears is part of their identity. But not every player has a number to himself. Most share with other players. We thought it was time to settle this, and who better to decide than the NHL.com writers? They voted on every number, 1 to 99. Some were unanimous, and some were close calls. We'll reveal the results and bring in some familiar faces to give their thoughts. It's time to debate who wore it best. Welcome to NHL's Who Wore It Best. I'm Tony Luffman. Obviously not much debate about number 99, Wayne Gretzky. And that trend continued from 99 down to 93. We'll have a discussion about 92, but first, let's see who the NHL.com writers voted for, from 99 down to 93. And here they are to debate number 92 from 99 to 93. Some very obvious choices. We have a killer duo coming off of killer Doug Gilmour. Brian Burke, a Stanley Cup champion himself, and Pierre McGuire. The whole hockey world knows you guys. The whole hockey world knows some of the choices at 92. Calder winner Gabe Landeskog, Cup winner Rick Tocchet back in 92. And speaking of that, Pierre McGuire, you were an assistant coach on that Pens team. Would that influence who you'd pick at 92?
No question about it, Tony. The biggest thing about Rick Tocchet when he came over from the Philadelphia Flyers for Kenny Reggett and Kjell Samuelsson, the biggest thing was he wore number 22 when he was playing for Philadelphia. He comes to Pittsburgh and Paul Stanton's actually wearing number 22. And he says, you know what? That's Paul Stanton's number. He played great, won a Stanley Cup in 91. I'm just going to take 92, the year I was traded to Pittsburgh. And man, did he wear it well. He had 30 points in 19 regular season games. He had 19 points in 14 playoff games. He played with a broken jaw throughout the playoffs when he came back in. He was a phenomenal leader. He is everything that a Pittsburgh Penguin should be, heart and soul. Without a doubt, in my mind, it's Rick Tocchet.
Brian Burke, that's a powerful statement, playing with a broken jaw. Who are you going with at 92?
Well, I'm going with Rick Tocchet as well, mainly because I'd be afraid the next time I see him, if I didn't pick him, he'd beat the snot out of me. The thing about Rick Tocchet that's exceptional is he put up big offensive numbers, but he put up big penalty minutes too. In an era where physical play was prized, he was a feared guy. And to do the things he did offensively, like Pierre said, but also bring that physical menacing presence, I'm going with him. And he's had a great coaching career, won 3 cups, 1 as a player, 2 as a coach in Pittsburgh, and he's had a great coaching career since then. Rick Tocchet. This one, I loved Gabriel Landeskog, and he might be in the conversation someday, but not today.
It's fascinating when you mention the rings and Tocchet, the credibility that he brought to the desert and the turnaround that he's been able to engineer with a Coyotes franchise that hasn't been in the playoffs since 2012. Back to Landeskog, Pierre, the guy wins the Calder. At the time he gets the C from the Avalanche, he's the youngest player in the history of the league to be named captain. That says a lot about the level of respect for Gabe Landeskog. How impressed were you with him? How close was it between Toc and Gabe?
Very, very close. And one of the things that is phenomenal about Gabriel Landeskog, when it wasn't fashionable for Swedish-born players to come play major junior hockey in Canada, he chose to do it. But what blows me away about Landeskog, he's got that North American component that Brian was talking about with Rick Tocchet, the physical side, the nasty side. But he's a tremendous leader, very eloquent, and somebody that someday I think people will say he wore 92 really well.
To Nick Kotzanika, one of those writers from NHL.com who participated in the debate and the vote, Nick joins us right now to give us the verdict. Who wore it best? Number 92.
This was one of the spirited debates, and I'm not worried about Tocchet breaking my nose, because luckily for me, I'm in the media, and he's good to the media. The only scrums I'm in are interview scrums. But we went with Landeskog, and a big reason for that is Tocchet split his career between 92 and 22. Landeskog has worn 92 since the beginning. He won the Calder in it. He's put up some pretty good numbers for the Avalanche. And, you know, he's better spoken in English than I am, and he's from Sweden. You'd think the guy is from Stockholm, Ontario, or Stockholm, Colorado. He really wears it well, and he represents the Avalanche well in 92.
Coming up next, 2 current superstars and 2 living legends. Number 91 is straight ahead on NHL's Who Wore It Best. Welcome back with Brian Burke and Pierre McGuire. Who wore it best? And we're at number 91. Huge names here, Brian Burke. Fedorov, 3 cups. Butch Goring, 4 cups, and a Conn Smythe. Tough debate. Where do you sit on this number?
Well, I don't think it's that tough. I think with Stamkos and Tavares, these are guys that might get there someday. Butch Goring was a great player, but not in the category of Sergei Fedorov. I traded Sergei Fedorov. I didn't have a particularly good experience with him, but 1,179 points, 2 Selkies, a Conn Smythe, 3 rings. When he buys gas at the gas station, he's got rings on 3 fingers. But this guy played 2 positions in the National Hockey League. That's almost impossible in the modern era. He played forward, he played defense, he could play wing if needed. But this guy was a great player for a long time, great international resume. To me, there's not much of a debate here. Sergei Fedorov.
Brian, there's no debate at all. It's Sergei Fedorov, and I say that with all due respect to Butch Goring and his 4 cups and his Conn Smythe. Sergei Fedorov not only won the 3 cups, he won 3 President's Trophies as well. And the thing that stands out to me is how he really increased the pace of the National Hockey League. When you had the 1-2 punch down the middle with Yzerman and Fedorov, being an assistant coach or a head coach in the NHL, pretty darn tough to drop a game plan for 19 and 91. 91 is Sergei Fedorov, Tony.
There are a couple of real outstanding current NHLers that wear that number. I'm thinking of Steven Stamkos and his Rocket Richards plural. John Tavares, you talk about responding to pressure. He goes to Toronto and delivers right away. Those 2 guys obviously can't measure up to the depth and the length of the careers of the guys we've been talking about. But Brian, how impressed are you with Stamkos and John Tavares?
Well, I love Steven Stamkos. He's got great totals, but they'd be way better if he could stay healthy. He's had injury problems, and his team hasn't won anything yet. John Tavares, I get to see him play a lot here in Toronto. I love him as a player. He has delivered. He's going to end up with great stats, and he might be in the conversation. They both have incomplete bodies of work. They're both really good players. They're both really good guys. But we're talking about this guy, Sergei Fedorov, did everything. He did everything he could do in the game. He won every trophy. He had international success. These guys have a ways to go before they can talk about them in the same breath.
Nick Kotsanika, jump back in. 91. The NHL.com writers, who did you decide wore it best?
This one's so obvious, even the writers can get it right.
Good.
It's unanimous. It's Sergei Fedorov. I mean, 1 Hart, 2 Selkies, 3 cups. Probably could have won a Norris had Scotty Bowman kept him on the blue line. And he set across the board records for goals, assists, and points for Russian-born players. Only Alex Ovechkin has beaten his records for goals and points. He still has the record for assists. I mean, he wore 91 and made it famous with all, apologies to Butch Goring. Part of the NHL 100, I think he wore it best for sure.
No doubt about it. Sergei Fedorov, a truly special player. Taking a quick break here on NHL's Who Wore It Best. Straight ahead, we're headed to the 80s and 2 debates. Can't wait to hear what our experts have to say right after this. Welcome back to NHL's Who Wore It Best. Brian Burke, Pierre McGuire. We've had spirited discussions to this point, and now we get to number 88. Couple of Hart Trophy winners come to mind immediately. Big E, Eric Lindros, and Patrick Kane, the first American-born player to win the Hart and the Art Ross in the same year. Decorated players. How do you sort this one out?
Well, it's easy for me, and I really respect Eric Lindros and everything he did over the course of his career, but I'm going to go with Patrick Kane, 3-time Stanley Cup winner, series-winning goal in 2010 in Game 6 in Philadelphia, in 2007, first overall. And the biggest thing to me is he's already had his number 88 retired with the London Knights. So it's not too far down the road when he's going to have his number retired by the Chicago Blackhawks. he wore 88 unbelievably well and still does.
I agree, Pierre. He's to me, this one's not that difficult. Eric Lindros was a great player. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame for a reason. And Brent Burns is a hell of a player too. So you're starting with a group that are really select to begin with. But the best player in this group for me is Patrick Kane. 1,000 points. This guy makes everyone on the ice dangerous. He's a great playmaker, but he can also score goals. He was a skinny little kid when he turned pro. He's worked really hard. He's a ripped guy now. He's dangerous. I hated when my teams played against him. He scared the hell out of me. I've had him on the Olympic teams. He's a great kid. So again, when he buys gas, he's got 3 rings on his hand. He's the best.
Modern day Norris Trophy winner Brent Burns. Pierre, what does he need to do to narrow the gap with Kane, or can he?
Well, I don't think he can narrow the gap with Patrick Kane, but one of the things about Brent Burns that's phenomenal is Jacques Lemaire, when he had him with the Minnesota Wild, along with Mike Ramsey and Mario Tremblay, said, this guy's a good forward, but be a whole lot better defensively. And what they've done is they've made him a hybrid player. Is he the most stout, robust defensive player in the National Hockey League? No, he's not. But man, oh man, there are very few guys in the back end that can carry the puck like him, shoot the puck like him, log minutes like him, and be a really important part of his franchise, which he is in San Jose. So I think that move from forward to defense by Jacques Lemaire and Mike Ramsey and Mario Tremblay has really helped Brent Burns in terms of establishing his career.
Well, it's quite clear that the obvious choice between our 2 panelists is number 88, Patrick Kane. We bring in Nick Kotsanika, and I hope you and the NHL.com writers got it right, because if not, I think Brian Burke's about to get really fired up. Who wore it best? 88.
Hey, man, we're always right. That's why we're going last, right, in these debates. But, for us, it was a 2-horse race. It's Eric Lindros or Patrick Kane, and it's got to be Patrick Kane. I mean, the fact that we could have a whole show about who's the greatest American player ever, and Patrick Kane has such a strong case right now, speaks volumes to me. I mean, he was the first American to win the scoring title, the first American to win the Hart Trophy. He's won the Calder, the Conn Smythe, the Stanley Cup 3 times. That's a lot of hardware, and that's a pretty good showing for number 88.
Showtime getting the love he deserves. Now it's time to check out 87 through 82, and we'll be back with the debate at number 81. So from Straka at 82, we arrive at 81, and some compelling names here. Hossa, Kessel, Shatan, Pierre. What's your thought? Who wore it best at number 81?
Well, first of all, we have to go through the genesis of how Marian Hossa, who wore number 18 most of his career, got to 81. He goes to the Stanley Cup final 3 years in a row with 3 different teams. Once with Pittsburgh, number 18. Once with Detroit, except guess what happens? Kirk Maltby wears number 18 in Detroit. So Hossa goes from 18 to 81. So that's how we get into this debate of Hossa wearing number 81. Former first-round pick of the Ottawa Senators, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, a guy that's got over 1,300 points in the league. I mean, you can't say enough good things about Marian Hossa. And here's the one dynamic, Brian, you'll appreciate. When you do all the fact-finding on Marian Hossa, he was a winger. He was a -1 season in his career. In 19 years,
Wow.
He was only a minus player 1 season, and that was in 2007, 2008 with the Atlanta Thrashers. Outside of that, he was never a minus player, Brian Burke.
I agree. I go with Marian Hossa and 3. When he buys gas, 3 rings. But this is a guy who's a really elegant player, and I like how he chased it. He tried to win. He went to teams that he thought had a chance to win, played in the finals 3 straight years, winning the Cup in 2010 in Chicago in the 3rd of those 3. So I like how he chased it. He had a great international career for Slovakia. Elegant, classy player, put up big numbers, won championships, not much hardware. That's the only knock on him, but he's clearly the best player in the league that wore this number for me.
Gentlemen, HBK, we think back to the 2016 Stanley Cup final. There were some people who thought Phil Kessel was in the talking in terms of the debate regarding who would win the Conn Smythe. Then they win the Cup the next year. How about Phil Kessel? 81. Did he get consideration from either of you?
Well, I had Phil Kessel, obviously. I love Phil Kessel. He played for me in the Olympics. I had him in Toronto. I made a big trade for him. He's a great player. Miro Shatan was a great player. You're talking in a debate like this, you're talking about quality players, elite players. But he has not statistically accomplished what Marian Hossa accomplished. And on Pittsburgh, you'd say he's at best their third best player. So to me, it's Marian Hossa by a comfortable margin. And I love Phil Kessel.
So it sounds quite clear that Marian Hossa is our expert's choice. Was it as clear to the NHL.com writers? Nick Kotzanika, please tell us that you got it right.
We always get it right. It's definitely clear. It's Marian Hossa at number 81. I do think this is a fun two-horse race, though. You look at Kessel versus Hossa. You've got two outstanding complementary players on Stanley Cup championship teams. But when you break it down, you look at Marian Hossa, he was an outstanding defensive forward. So I think he's got the edge there over Phil Kessel. You think of Phil Kessel as an offensive player. Well, Marian Hossa has better offensive numbers in raw totals, goals, assists, and points, and in goals per game, assists per game, and points per game. You look at it that way, I think he's the pretty clear choice at number 81.
Our experts said that this might be their toughest call of the show. Number 77 is straight ahead on NHL's Who Wore It Best. Welcome back to NHL's Who Wore It Best. At number 77, we have some of the biggest names to ever put on skates. I can rattle them off just by last name, and we all know who Burke, Coffey, Espo, Oates are. These guys are legends. I can't wait to hear your opinions. Let's start with you, Pierre.
Well, in 1979, the Boston Bruins made Raymond Burke a first-round pick out of the Quebec Major Junior League. He wore number 7 until December the 3rd, 1987. That's the night they retired Phil Esposito's number 7. And the way Raymond Burke handled that was unbelievable. He came over, awards Phil Esposito his number 7, then Raymond takes off his number to show that he's now going to wear number 77. So right there, this is Hollywood stuff of how he started wearing number 77. I don't need to talk about the 5 Norris trophies. I don't need to talk about the Calder. I don't need to talk about the fact that he's got 48 more career points than Paul Coffey, Brian Burke. The truth of the matter is how he got to wear number 77 is amazing.
Well, I lost sleep over this one. I'm with Ray Burke at 77 also, but I can't believe I'm uttering a sentence and saying that Paul Coffey was not the best player to ever wear that number because he was so special. Phil Esposito. I mean, the passage of time, a lot of great players get overlooked. Phil Esposito should never be overlooked. He was a great player. But Raymond Burke outscored Paul Coffey. He does have a ring. He got it in Colorado, which looked weird, by the way. But 5 times, like you say, Norris Trophy. And I think the difference between the two players is that Raymond was a better defender. Raymond was an elite defender. Paul was a good defender, but known as an offensive guy. Ray Burke put up the offense. He still has the NHL record for most shots on net in a game. Got lots of shots through, was an offensive factor, but was an elite defender. So I'm going with Ray.
Brian, as you mentioned, the ring with the Avs in 01, the unforgettable line by Gary Thorne after 22 years, Raymond Burke. For those of us that are fans of the game, that was a goosebumps moment. Even if you weren't a fan of the Avs, you felt great for Ray Burke. What was your reaction emotionally when you saw that unfold?
I thought it was amazing because I've gotten to know Raymond a little bit over the years. I remember Harry Sinden telling me that Ray didn't ask for a trade that year. Harry went to Raymond and said, look, we're not in contention here. Do you want me to get you somewhere where you have a chance to win? That's how it started. He never asked for a trade. And so he goes to Colorado. They don't succeed. They won their cup in a game 7. That's how close it came to Ray Burke not winning a cup. I got goosebumps too. It was so special to see a player that had done that much in the game finally get to hold up that trophy. It was awesome.
It's impossible to measure up against these legends, but there is a modern day 77 that I know both of you admire. He's a Norris Trophy winner, but Pierre, you think that the best Victor Hedman you've seen was when he was even younger. Tell us about it.
Well, first he was a 16-year-old that played in the Swedish Elite League for Modo over in Sweden, which is where Peter Forsberg and Marcus Naslund came from. It's a legendary program in the Swedish Elite League. And as a 16-year-old to play in that league, that's unbelievable, number one. Number two, his two World Juniors, 08 in Česká Budějovice in the Czech Republic, and 09 in Ottawa. He wasn't just a little bit good. He was dominatingly good. And a lot of people, Brian, I know you were managing at the time, really thought there was a major debate. Is it Matt Duchene, is it Victor Hedman, or is it John Tavares for number one in that draft? What I find is really cool about this whole thing with number 77, Victor Hedman is one of those number 77s, and Raymond Bourque wore 77. And one of the reasons why Hedman chose number 77 to wear in Tampa is because he watched Raymond Bourque win the Stanley Cup as a 77 in Colorado. So there's so many different storylines based on 77 that I find ultimately fascinating.
Raymond Bourque is the guy, according to our experts, Nick Kotsanika, the writers for NHL.com. Did you all pick Raymond Bourque?
It was Raymond Bourque for the writers. Speaking for me personally, when you're comparing a Raymond Bourque to a Paul Coffey, you are splitting hairs, and I'll explain how I split them. It's not who's the best player to wear the number, it's who wore the number best. And when you're looking at these two guys, you have to look at when they wore 7 and when they wore 77. Coffey won the Norris twice wearing number 7 at Edmonton. That's the number the Oilers retired for Paul Coffey. After he switched to 77, he won the Norris once. Raymond Bourque won the Calder and the Norris wearing number 7. And then when he switched to number 77, he won the Norris 4 more times. So for me, Bourque wore number 77 best.
Tremendous discussion there about Ray Bourque. Goosebumps stuff. Wow. Not much debate on this next group of players from 76 through 61. Let's see who the NHL.com writers voted for in these spots. Well, this has been fascinating. Episode 1 of Who Wore It Best. Not since Hollywood Squares with Jim J. Bullock have I enjoyed watching boxes this much. Thank you so much to Brian Burke and Pierre McGuire and Nick Kotsanika. We will see you next time. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. NHL, Who Wore It Best?